For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had whispered about them in hushed tones. The species from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The ones who turned their entire world into a battlefield and, somehow, called it progress. The ones who looked at the impossible and said, "Hold my beer." They called them the Ghost Warriors, the Death Worlders, the Unbreakable Ones. Stories passed down through generations of alien civilizations spoke of beings who could survive in environments that would kill most species instantly, who fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, and who possessed something the galaxy had never seen before: the ability to turn certain defeat into impossible victory through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. But stories were just stories, weren't they? The Galactic Council was about to find out that some myths are born from terrifying truths. And when humanity finally stepped onto their first interstellar battlefield, the galaxy would learn why Earth had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. The universe was about to meet its apex predators. Admiral Zexhari of the Vorthan Imperial Fleet had seen many species fall before the might of the Dominion war machine. The crystalline beings of Nexus Prime had shattered like glass under orbital bombardment. The proud warrior clans of the Bloody Reaches had bent the knee after watching their homeworlds burn. Even the technologically advanced Synthari had surrendered when faced with the overwhelming numbers of the Dominion fleet. But as his massive dreadnought Worldbreaker dropped out of hyperspace above the blue-green planet the locals called Earth, something felt different. The planet below wasn't evacuating. There were no desperate transmissions begging for mercy. No offers of unconditional surrender. Instead, his sensors detected something that made his four hearts skip in unison. The humans were mobilizing. Admiral, his tactical officer, a nervous Quillen named VexTI, spoke with barely contained panic in his voice. The readings from the planet's surface, they don't make sense. Zexhari's massive form shifted in his command throne, his scales rippling with annoyance. "Explain." "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures across every continent. Industrial complexes are operating at maximum capacity. Their primitive nuclear reactors are being pushed beyond safe parameters. And their communications networks." VexTI paused, his tentacles trembling as he rechecked his readings. They're not discussing surrender terms. They're coordinating military responses. The Admiral's laugh was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the bridge. "These primitives think they can resist the Dominion? Show me what pathetic defenses they've managed to scrape together." The main display flickered to life, showing a tactical overview of Earth's surface. What Zexhari saw made his laughter die in his throat. The humans hadn't just built defenses. They had turned their entire planet into a fortress. Massive railgun installations stretched across continents, their barrels pointed skyward like the quills of some enormous beast. Orbital defense platforms, crude by Dominion standards, but numerous beyond belief, dotted the space around Earth like deadly stars. But most disturbing of all were the humans themselves. Every major population center showed the same pattern. Instead of fleeing, humans were gathering in organized groups. Military forces, yes, but also civilians. Millions upon millions of civilians, all moving with purpose toward predetermined positions. "They're not evacuating," VexTI whispered. They're taking positions." Zexhari studied the tactical display with growing unease. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Species either fled or surrendered when faced with Dominion might. They didn't organize their entire population for war. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Put it through." The face that appeared on the screen was unlike any Zexhari had encountered in his long military career. The human was clearly old by their species standards, with gray hair and line features, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made the Admiral's scales prickle with involuntary fear. The human wore what appeared to be a military uniform, covered in colorful ribbons and insignia. I am General Marcus Chun, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Forces, the human said, his voice carrying across space with calm authority. You have entered our solar system uninvited and with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw. Leave now, or face the consequences. The bridge fell silent. Even the constant hum of the ship's systems seemed muted by the audacity of the transmission. Zexhari found his voice first. I'm Admiral Zexhari of the Dominion 4th Fleet. Your world will surrender unconditionally, or we will turn your cities to glass and your oceans to steam. You have one of your standard rotations to comply. The human's expression didn't change. Admiral, you seem to be under a misapprehension. This isn't a negotiation. This is a warning. You've never faced humans in combat before. You don't understand what you're dealing with. We have conquered 200 worlds, Zexhari snarled. Your primitive species cannot hope to stand against us. General Chun leaned forward slightly, and for a moment, Zexhari glimpsed something in the human's eyes that made his blood run cold. It wasn't fear or desperation. It was anticipation. Admiral, Chin said quietly, every species you've conquered before today had one thing in common. They evolved on worlds where cooperation and peace were survival advantages. They built civilizations based on harmony and mutual benefit. The human's lips curved in what might have been a smile, but held no warmth whatsoever. Earth is different. We didn't evolve to cooperate, Admiral. We evolved to wage war. For 10,000 years, we've done nothing but perfect the art of killing each other. We've survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and our own stupidity. We've built weapons that can crack continents and split atoms. We've fought wars with everything from sticks and stones to weapons that can eliminate all life on a planet. Chun stood up, and somehow his presence seemed to fill the screen. But, most importantly, Admiral, we've never lost a war we were determined to win. Earth has never been conquered. Not once, not ever, not by anyone. And today will not be the day that changes. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zexhari felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Doubt. But he was an admiral of the Dominion fleet, conqueror of worlds. He would not be intimidated by a single primitive species, no matter how fierce their words. Begin orbital bombardment, he ordered. Target their major population centers. If they want to play at being warriors, we'll show them what real power looks like. The Worldbreaker's massive plasma cannons charged with a low hum that vibrated through the ship's hull. The Admiral watched with satisfaction as targeting solutions appeared on his tactical display. 5 shots would be enough to break their spirit. 10 would eliminate their ability to resist. Weapons charged and ready, Admiral. Fire. Lances of superheated plasma leaped from the Worldbreaker toward the blue planet below. Each blast contained enough energy to vaporize a small mountain. They would create firestorms that would be visible from space, craters that would scar the planet for millennia. Zexhari watched the tactical display, waiting for the satisfying blooms of destruction that would signal Earth's capitulation. Instead, his weapons officer began screaming. Impossible. The plasma streams are being disrupted. On the display, Zexhari watched in disbelief as his devastating barrage was met by streams of coherent energy rising from Earth's surface. Not deflector shields, which would have absorbed or redirected the plasma, but something else entirely. The humans were somehow neutralizing his weapon's fire at the particle level, turning devastating plasma into harmless light. Ow, he demanded. Unknown technology, sir. It appears they're using some form of quantum interference to destabilize the plasma matrix. Our weapons are completely ineffective. Before Zexhari could respond, new contacts appeared on his sensors. Rising from Earth's surface like angry hornets came thousands of small craft. No, not craft, he realized with growing horror. Missiles. But not ordinary missiles. These were moving at velocities that should have been impossible for chemical rockets. and they were following trajectories that defied conventional physics. "Evasive maneuvers," he roared. Too late. The first wave of human weapons struck his fleet like the fist of an angry god. Ships that had terrorized dozens of worlds vanished in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. Others, caught by weapons that seemed to bend space itself, were crushed into impossibly dense points of matter. But it was what happened next that truly shook the Admiral to his core. Instead of following up their devastating first strike, the humans did something unprecedented. They transmitted again. General Chen's face reappeared on the screen, but now the Admiral could see a massive command center behind him, filled with humans working at incomprehensible displays. The activity was frenzied but controlled, purposeful. "Admiral HFY, you've just experienced a demonstration of human defensive capabilities. We've destroyed 30% of your fleet in the opening exchange. Your remaining vessels are now within range of our secondary systems." Chen's voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something that made HFY's scales crawl with primordial fear. "This is still your opportunity to withdraw. Leave our system now, and we'll allow your surviving ships to depart unharmed." "You're bluffing," HFY gasped, though even as he said it, he could see the tactical displays showing the devastating losses his fleet had sustained. No species has weapons capable of such destruction. Chen's expression grew sad. Actually sad, as if he was disappointed by the Admiral's response. "We tried to warn you, Admiral. You just met our defensive systems. Our weapons designed to protect our world from exactly this scenario. But you want to see our offensive capabilities." The human leaned back in his chair, and HFY realized with dawning terror that the sadness in Chen's eyes wasn't for the humans. It was for him. "Very well. Consider this a practical education in why humans have never been conquered." The transmission ended, and immediately HFY's sensors detected new activity throughout the human solar system. Ships were emerging from what he had assumed were asteroids. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as space debris were powering up. And from the planet itself came something that defied belief. Humans, in individual combat suits. Thousands upon thousands of them, launched from the planet's surface on trajectories that would bring them directly into contact with his fleet. "They're launching ground troops," VexTI whispered in disbelief. "At us, in space, without ships." HFY watched in fascination and growing terror as the human warriors flew through the void toward his remaining vessels. Each was encased in what appeared to be sophisticated combat armor, but armor unlike anything in the Dominion's databases. It wasn't just protective, it was weaponized. The first human to reach his fleet struck the cruiser Star Render like a living missile. Instead of splattering against the hull, the humans somehow anchored themselves to the ship's surface and began cutting through the armor, plating with tools that seemed to slice through molecular bonds themselves. Within minutes, the Star Render's hull was breached in dozens of places. Then, the humans disappeared inside, and HFY could only listen in horror to the screams coming through the communication channels. "Admiral," the captain of the Star Render's voice crackled through the comm system, thick with panic. "They're inside the ship. They're moving through our corridors like they've done this before. Our security forces can't stop them. They're using the ship's own systems against us. They're turning our own weapons on us. Admiral, these aren't soldiers. They're living weapons." The transmission cut to static. HFY looked around his bridge at faces filled with terror. His crew, veterans of countless campaigns, conquerors of worlds, were staring at their displays in slack-jawed fear. On the tactical screen, human warriors were systematically dismantling his fleet ship by ship. They moved through space as if it were their natural environment, coordinated with precision that spoke of decades of training, and fought with a ferocity that beggared belief. But most terrifying of all was their method. They weren't just destroying his ships. They were capturing them, converting them, turning the Dominion's own weapons against the Dominion fleet. "Sir," His communications officer spoke in a voice that shook with terror. Transmission incoming from the humans. General Chun appeared again, but now he was standing in what was clearly the bridge of one of Zexhari's own ships. Human technicians were working at Dominion control stations as if they had designed them themselves. Admiral, this is the part where most species would offer you one final chance to surrender, Chen said, his voice carrying across the void with terrible finality. But you chose to threaten Earth. You chose to attack our home. You chose to underestimate what happens when you corner a species that evolved by turning everything into a weapon. Behind Chun, Zexhari could see human warriors removing Dominion crew members from their stations. Not killing them, he realized with surprise. Capturing them. Processing them with efficient, professional brutality. There will be no surrender offer this time, Admiral. You've seen our defensive measures. You've experienced our rapid response capabilities. Now you get to learn why every species in this galaxy should be grateful that humans chose to stay on their own world for so long. Chen gestured, and the display changed to show a tactical overview of the entire battle. Zexhari's mighty fleet, which had intimidated entire sectors of the galaxy, was being systematically dismantled by a species that hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel a century ago. We've been preparing for this moment for generations, Admiral. Every science fiction story, every war game, every military exercise, every bit of human paranoia and aggression has been focused on one question. What would we do if someone tried to conquer Earth? Chen's smile was the most terrifying thing Zexhari had ever seen. Today, the galaxy gets its answer. As if summoned by his words, the space around Earth suddenly filled with new contacts. Ships that dwarfed even the Worldbreaker began emerging from concealed positions throughout the solar system. But these weren't defensive platforms. These were warships. Human warships, built with technologies that shouldn't have existed, armed with weapons that defied known physics. Zexhari realized, with the clarity that comes just before death, that everything the Dominion thought it knew about humans was wrong. They weren't a primitive species. They were apex predators who had been hiding their true capabilities until someone was foolish enough to threaten their home. The last thing Admiral Zexhari saw before his flagship was torn apart by forces beyond his comprehension was General Chen's final words. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral. We hope you've enjoyed your stay." The news traveled through the Galactic communications network like a virus, spreading from system to system faster than the speed of light itself. At first, nobody believed it. The Dominion Fourth Fleet gone, vanished, eliminated, not defeated in some epic space battle that lasted for days, not worn down through a campaign of attrition, eliminated in less than 6 standard hours. Counselor Thexla of the United Worlds Assembly sat in her crystalline meditation chamber on the neutral world of Sanctuary Prime, reading the reports with growing disbelief. The delicate tracery of her translucent body pulsed with colors that indicated deep confusion and barely suppressed panic. The first reports had been fragmentary. Automated distress beacons from Dominion ships, transmitting coordinates that placed them in the Sol system. Then silence. Complete, absolute silence. Now, 3 days later, the full reports were coming in from long-range sensors and intelligence networks throughout the outer spiral arm. The story they told was impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. Humanity had not just repelled an invasion. They had annihilated the attackers so thoroughly that not a single Dominion ship had escaped to carry word back to the Empire. Counselor, her aide, a nervous Quillen named Bex T.I., floated into the chamber on his anti-gravity platform. The emergency session of the Assembly is about to convene. The other counselors are agitated. Thexla's body shifted through spectrums of light that indicated profound concern. Have we received any direct communication from the humans? Yes, Counselor. 3 hours ago. It was unusual. Show me. The air in the chamber shimmered, and a 3-dimensional projection of a human appeared. Thexla had seen images of the species before, of course, but always in the context of xenological studies and cultural analyses. This human was different. He wore what appeared to be formal diplomatic attire, but there was something about his bearing, something in his eyes, that spoke of barely contained violence. "Greetings to the United Worlds Assembly," the human said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. "I am Secretary of Interstellar Affairs James Morrison, representing the United Earth Government. We understand there may be some concern in the galactic community regarding recent events in our solar system." Morrison paused, and Fexla found herself studying his expression with growing unease. She had analyzed thousands of diplomatic transmissions over her long career, but she had never encountered anything quite like this. The human appeared calm, reasonable, even friendly. But underneath that diplomatic facade was something that made her crystalline structure vibrate with instinctual fear. "We want to make our position absolutely clear," Morrison continued. "Earth seeks peaceful relationships with all sentient species. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our own solar system. We do not wish to interfere with existing galactic political structures." His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "However, any attempt to invade, conquer, or otherwise harm Earth or human interests will be met with overwhelming force." The projection gestured, and tactical displays filled the air around him. Fexla gasped as she recognized sensor readings from the destroyed Dominion fleet. The Dominion 4th Fleet approached our system with hostile intent. They ignored our warnings. They opened fire on our homeworld. Morrison's voice remained level, conversational, but there was something underneath it now that made Fexla's light patterns flicker with anxiety. Their fate serves as an example of human defensive capabilities. The tactical displays changed, showing what appeared to be construction activity throughout the human solar system. Massive shipyards, orbital installations, weapons platforms that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. "We have been preparing for contact with galactic civilization for some time," Morrison said. "Our preparations have been comprehensive. We understand that our emergence onto the galactic stage may cause some concern among existing powers. We want to assure everyone that Earth seeks only to defend itself and to engage in peaceful commerce and cultural exchange." Another pause, another subtle hardening of his expression. "But let there be no misunderstanding. Earth will not be conquered. Earth will not be subjugated. Earth will not bow to any external power, no matter how large or technologically advanced they believe themselves to be." Morrison leaned forward slightly, and suddenly Fexla understood why every intelligence analyst in the galaxy was having nightmares about this species. "We are not the Nexus Prime crystalline cities that shatter under bombardment. We are not the Bloody Reaches warrior clans that bend the knee when their worlds burn. We are humans. We evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill us for 4 billion years. We survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and our own stupidity. We have fought wars with everything from sharp sticks to weapons that can crack planets." The human stood up, and somehow his presence seemed to fill the entire projection chamber. "More importantly, we have something that no other species in this galaxy has ever possessed. We have never been conquered. Not once. Not ever. Not by anyone or anything." Morrison's smile was the most terrifying thing Fexla had ever seen. Earth has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. Every human military doctrine, every weapons system, every tactical innovation has been tested in combat against other humans. We are not a peaceful species learning to fight. We are a warrior species that has occasionally experimented with peace. The projection changed one final time, showing what appeared to be Earth's surface. But instead of the blue-green world the xenological surveys had described, Fexla saw a planet that had been transformed into something unprecedented. Every continent was dotted with military installations. Every ocean contained hidden weapons platforms. Every city was simultaneously a civilian population center and a fortress designed to resist invasion. The Dominion learned what happens when you threaten Earth, Morrison said quietly. Their fleet was eliminated not because we hate them, but because they represented a threat to our home. Any future threats will be dealt with similarly. He straightened his formal attire and smiled with diplomatic politeness. We look forward to peaceful relationships with all members of the galactic community. Earth's embassy will be established on Sanctuary Prime within the next standard month. We hope this marks the beginning of a new era of cooperation and understanding. The transmission ended, leaving Thexla alone in her chamber with thoughts that raced through her crystalline matrix like wildfire. The emergency session of the United Worlds Assembly was unlike anything in the organization's 3,000-year history. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the great amphitheater on Sanctuary Prime, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound, light, electromagnetic radiation, and chemical signals that the translation matrices could barely keep up with. At the center of it all sat Thexla, her role as session moderator requiring her to maintain some semblance of order in what was rapidly becoming a panic-driven debate about humanity's place in galactic civilization. The evidence is undeniable, declared Ambassador Kexvor of the Hegemony Council, his metallic carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. This species represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. They eliminated an entire Dominion fleet without suffering a single casualty. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of our most advanced systems, and their psychological profile suggests a species-wide addiction to violence and warfare. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Thexla's light patterns shifted to indicate deep concern as she watched representatives from dozens of species nod in acknowledgement of Kexvor's assessment. "What do you propose?" asked Counselor Vextra of the Outer Rim Alliance, her tentacled form writhing with nervous energy. The Dominion was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. If the humans could eliminate them so easily, what hope do the rest of us have? Preemptive action, Kexfor replied immediately. Form a coalition fleet. Combine the military resources of every major power. Strike before they can expand beyond their own system. The chamber erupted in chaos. Half the assembly began shouting in support of the proposal, while the other half argued against it with equal vehemence. Above the din, Thexla could hear fragments of dozens of conversations in multiple languages. Madness. Attack a species that just demonstrated the ability to eliminate the Dominion Fourth Fleet. We have no choice. They're clearly expansionist. Did you hear their transmission? They're already planning to establish embassies. Establishing embassies is a peaceful act, you fool. It means they want to talk. Or it means they want to gather intelligence before they attack. Thexla activated the chamber's harmonic resonance field, producing a sound that cut through the chaos and demanded attention. Slowly, the assembly fell quiet. "Before we make any decisions about humanity," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrices, "perhaps we should consider what we actually know about them." She gestured, and the chamber's central display came to life, showing a detailed analysis of human civilization that had been compiled by the Assembly's xenological research teams over the past several days. 3 days ago, we knew almost nothing about this species beyond basic observational data. Now, thanks to their rather dramatic introduction to galactic affairs, we have been forced to conduct the most intensive xenological analysis in Assembly history. The display changed, showing population statistics, technological assessments, and cultural analyses scrolled past the assembled representatives. "What we have learned is both fascinating and terrifying," Thexla continued. "Humanity is a relatively young species by galactic standards. They achieved spaceflight less than 200 of their years ago. They have never engaged in interstellar warfare. By all conventional measures, they should be completely unprepared for conflict with an advanced galactic power." The display shifted to show tactical analyses of the battle with the Dominion fleet. Instead, they demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our most optimistic projections for their technological development by several centuries. Their weapons systems appear to be based on principles that our finest scientists are still struggling to understand. Their tactical coordination was flawless. Most disturbing of all, their combat doctrine appears to be specifically designed to counter every known form of galactic warfare. Silence fell over the chamber as the implications of her words sank in. The question we must ask ourselves, Thexla said quietly, is not whether humanity is dangerous. Clearly, they are. The question is whether that danger represents a threat to us or to those who would threaten them. Ambassador Dex Lynn of the Trade Federation, a spidery creature whose species had built their civilization on careful risk assessment and profit analysis, spoke up from his elevated platform. The economic implications alone are staggering, he said, his multifaceted voice creating harmonics in several octaves simultaneously. If humanity possesses the technological capabilities they demonstrated against the Dominion, their potential contributions to galactic commerce could be significant. Assuming they don't simply conquer us all, muttered Kexvor. Consider their actions more carefully, Dexlin replied. They could have pursued the fleeing Dominion ships. They could have launched immediate retaliatory strikes against Dominion worlds. Instead, they contained the conflict to their own system and then immediately opened diplomatic channels. This does not suggest a species bent on conquest. The debate continued for hours, but gradually a consensus began to emerge. Humanity was clearly the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered, but they had also demonstrated restraint and a desire for peaceful relationships. The question was how to respond to their emergence onto the galactic stage. It was Counselor Yexenai of the Scientific Alliance who proposed the solution that would ultimately be adopted. We observe, she said simply. We establish formal diplomatic relations. We trade with them carefully. We study them intensively. And, most importantly, we never, ever give them a reason to view us as a threat. The vote was nearly unanimous. As the session ended and representatives began dispersing to their various quarters and transport vessels, Thexla found herself approached by a small group of her closest colleagues. Their expressions, translated through various biological and technological interfaces, all conveyed the same sentiment: worry. "Do you think we're making the right decision?" asked Bex Ti quietly. Thexla considered the question for a long moment, her crystalline structure cycling through colors that indicated deep contemplation. "I think," she said finally, "that we have encountered something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that combines advanced technology, sophisticated tactics, and evolutionary aggression in a way that no theoretical models predicted." She paused, watching the last few representatives exit the Great Chamber. Whether our response is correct remains to be seen. But I am certain of one thing. What's that? The galaxy has changed forever. The age of the great empires dominating weaker species through military might is over. From this day forward, every civilization in known space will have to account for one simple fact. There is a species out there that cannot be conquered, will not be intimidated, and possesses the capability to eliminate any threat to their existence. Thexla's light patterns shifted to colors that indicated grim determination. Whether that makes them our greatest allies or our most dangerous enemies will depend entirely on how we choose to treat them. Far across the galaxy, in the heart of Dominion space, Emperor Klextar received the news of his Fourth Fleet's destruction with the kind of cold rage that had made him the most feared ruler in known space. But as he listened to the tactical reports and watched the sensor recordings of humanity's capabilities, his rage gradually gave way to something he had not experienced in over a century. Fear. The humans had not just defeated his fleet. They had made it look easy. For the first time in his long reign, Emperor Klextar began to wonder if the Dominion had finally encountered an enemy they could not overcome. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations detected massive construction activity throughout the Sol system. Humanity was building something big. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the galaxy had not been the same since. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood at the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Embassy on Sanctuary Prime, watching the constant stream of ships arriving and departing from the neutral world's orbital facilities. The irony of her surname was not lost on her. She was General Marcus Chen's daughter, and she had inherited both his tactical mind and his diplomatic skills. Where her father had introduced humanity to the galaxy through overwhelming force, she was now tasked with managing the aftermath through more subtle means. The view outside was spectacular. Ships from dozens of species moved through carefully coordinated traffic patterns, their various propulsion systems creating a light show that never failed to impress human visitors. But Sarah was not watching for entertainment. She was conducting reconnaissance. In the 6 months since humanity's dramatic entrance onto the galactic stage, everything had changed. Trade routes had shifted. Military alliances had been reformed. Entire sectors of space that had been under Dominion control were now declaring independence, emboldened by the knowledge that the seemingly invincible empire could be defeated. More importantly for Earth's interests, every major power in the galaxy was desperately trying to figure out how to deal with humanity. Ambassador, her aide, Lieutenant Commander David Park, approached from behind carrying a datapad. The morning intelligence briefings are ready for your review. Sarah turned from the observation window and accepted the pad. The information scrolling across its surface would have been considered state secrets on any other world, but Earth's intelligence gathering capabilities had proven to be as advanced as their military technology. "What's the situation with the Dominion?" she asked. "Growing more unstable by the day," Park replied. "Emperor Klextar has recalled every available fleet to defend the core worlds. 17 outer systems have declared independence in the past month alone. Intelligence suggests the Empire is planning a massive military buildup, but they're having trouble finding willing recruits." Sarah smiled grimly. Hard to convince people to join an army that was completely eliminated by a single species. "There's more," Park continued. "The Hegemony Council is requesting another meeting to discuss mutual defense agreements. The Trade Federation wants to negotiate exclusive technology sharing deals. And the Scientific Alliance is practically begging for permission to establish research stations in the Sol system." "And the Dominion?" Park's expression grew serious. "Radio silence. Complete communications blackout. But our long-range sensors are detecting massive military construction activity throughout their core systems." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. The Dominion was too proud and too invested in their image of invincibility to accept their defeat gracefully. Emperor Klextar would eventually try to restore his empire's reputation through force. And when he did, Earth needed to be ready. "Schedule a meeting with the Hegemony Council for this afternoon," she decided, and sent a message to Earth Command. "Tell them to accelerate the fleet expansion program. We're going to need more ships." "Yes, Ambassador. There's one more thing. We received a formal request from the United Worlds Assembly. They want to observe human military exercises." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "They want to watch us train?" Apparently, there's been a significant shift in galactic military doctrine since Sol. Every major power is trying to understand how we fight. They want to see our tactics in action. Sarah considered this for a moment. On one hand, revealing human military capabilities could be dangerous. On the other hand, demonstrating those capabilities might prevent future conflicts. Set it up, she decided. But make it a limited demonstration. Show them enough to understand that attacking Earth would be suicide, but not enough to give away our real capabilities. As Park left to carry out her orders, Sarah returned to the observation window. Below, on the planet's surface, she could see the sprawling diplomatic complex that housed representatives from hundreds of species. For 3,000 years, this place had been the center of galactic civilization, where disputes were settled through negotiation and compromise rather than warfare. Now, whether they admitted it or not, every decision made in those halls was influenced by one simple question: what would the humans do? The demonstration took place in an empty system on the edge of neutral space, far enough from any inhabited worlds to prevent collateral damage, but close enough for the assembled observers to watch in safety. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Earth destroyer Indomitable, watching the tactical displays as the demonstration fleet moved into position. The human force was deliberately small, just 12 ships representing the basic components of Earth's naval doctrine. But Sarah knew that even this limited display would be enough to reshape galactic military thinking for generations. "All observers are in position," reported Captain Michelle Torres from her command station. "Shall we begin the demonstration?" "Proceed with Phase 1, Sarah confirmed. The first part of the demonstration was relatively simple, a standard ship-to-ship engagement simulation. The human fleet split into two groups and began engaging each other using low-power training weapons that could simulate combat damage without actually destroying the ships. But even this simple exercise revealed capabilities that left the observing alien military analysts stunned. Human ships moved with a coordination and precision that suggested individual vessels were merely components of a larger organism. Their weapons systems demonstrated accuracy levels that defied known physics. Most disturbing of all, their tactical patterns showed clear evidence of real-time adaptive strategy, as if the entire fleet was continuously learning and evolving its approach to the battle. "Phase 2, Sarah ordered. This time, the demonstration fleet faced simulated asteroid fields, debris clouds, and artificial hazards designed to replicate the conditions of actual space combat. Again, the human ships performed with capabilities that shouldn't have been possible. But it was Phase 3 that truly terrified the observers. "Begin the boarding demonstration," Captain Torres announced. The watching alien fleets detected massive energy signatures as the human ships began launching what appeared to be individual combat units directly into space. These units, each containing a single human warrior in advanced combat armor, began moving through the simulated battlefield with tactics that redefined the concept of space combat. Human Marines flew through the void as if it were their natural environment, using their suits' propulsion systems to perform maneuvers that would have been impossible for conventional spacecraft. They breached simulated enemy vessels, fought through their corridors using weapons that seemed to adapt to any situation, and captured or neutralized objectives with efficiency that spoke of decades of training. But most terrifying of all was their coordination. The human Marines didn't fight as individuals. They fought as components of a larger tactical system, sharing information instantaneously, supporting each other with precision that suggested telepathic communication, and adapting to changing situations faster than any biological nervous system should have been capable of. Ambassador Kexvor of the Hegemony Council watched the demonstration from the bridge of his flagship, Destiny's Edge, his metallic carapace reflecting his emotional state through subtle changes in color and texture. What he was seeing challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. "How is this possible?" he asked his military advisor, a veteran hegemony commander named Texlar who had spent centuries studying galactic combat doctrine. "It shouldn't be," Texlar replied, his own carapace showing colors that indicated deep confusion. "Their coordination levels suggest some form of hive mind intelligence, but our xenological profiles indicate they are individuals. Their weapons technology appears to violate several fundamental laws of physics, and their tactical patterns." He paused, studying the displays with growing unease. "Their tactical patterns show clear evidence that they've been preparing for this specific type of combat for generations." Kexvor felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "What do you mean?" "Look at their maneuvers, Ambassador. These aren't tactics developed for fighting other humans or for general space combat. These are tactics specifically designed to counter every known form of galactic warfare. They know exactly how we fight, and they've developed specific countermeasures for every doctrine in our databases. The implications of this statement hung in the air between them like a death sentence. If the humans had been preparing for galactic warfare for generations, it meant they had always intended to emerge onto the interstellar stage as a military power. It meant their peaceful overtures were merely diplomatic cover for a species-wide conquest strategy. Or, more terrifyingly, it meant they had been preparing to defend themselves against galactic civilization since before they had ever made contact with it. Ambassador, his communications officer interrupted, "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared on the main display, her expression calm and professional. Behind her, Kexvor could see the bridge of a human warship that seemed to combine advanced technology with functional military efficiency in a way that no other species had ever achieved. "Ambassador Kexvor," she said, "I hope you found the demonstration informative. As you can see, human military doctrine is comprehensive." "Indeed," Kexvor replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your capabilities are impressive. Perhaps more impressive than some in the galaxy might be comfortable with." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes reminded Kexvor uncomfortably of her father's final transmission before the destruction of the Dominion Fourth Fleet. "Ambassador, I want to make something very clear to you and to every other power watching this demonstration," she said. "Earth seeks peaceful relationships with all sentient species. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our own system. We do not wish to interfere with existing galactic political structures." The words were almost identical to her father's, but where General Chun had spoken with barely controlled violence, Ambassador Chun spoke with diplomatic calm. Somehow, that made her infinitely more terrifying. "However," she continued, "what you have seen today represents less than 5% of Earth's actual military capabilities. The demonstration fleet you observe consists entirely of ships that were built using technology available to us 50 years ago. Our current generation of warships are significantly more advanced." Kexvor felt his carapace shift to colors that indicated barely controlled panic. If what they had just observed represented outdated human technology, then Earth's current military capabilities were beyond comprehension. "More importantly," Sarah continued, "what you observed today was a training exercise conducted by regular human military forces. You did not observe our elite units. You did not observe our special forces. You did not observe the warriors who eliminated the Dominion Fourth Fleet." She leaned forward slightly, and suddenly, Kexvor understood exactly why this species had never been conquered. "I want every government watching this transmission to understand one thing clearly," Sarah said. "The humans you observe today were not our best. They were not our most advanced. They were not our most dangerous. They were simply representative of the baseline capabilities that every human military unit possesses." The transmission paused, and Kexvor could hear his own breathing echo through his carapace. "Earth will defend itself against any threat, no matter how large or technologically advanced. But more than that, Earth will defend its friends. Any species that chooses to stand with humanity will discover that human friendship comes with certain guarantees." Sarah straightened up and smiled with diplomatic politeness. "We look forward to continued peaceful relationships with all members of the galactic community. The demonstration is concluded." The transmission ended, leaving the watching fleets in stunned silence. Across the galaxy, military analysts and government officials struggled to process what they had witnessed. The demonstration had been intended to show galactic civilization that Earth could not be conquered. Instead, it had revealed that humanity represented a fundamental shift in the balance of galactic power. Within hours, communication networks throughout known space carried the same message, transmitted in hundreds of languages and communication protocols. The age of conquest was over. Any species that survived the coming years would do so by earning human approval or by staying far enough away from human interests to avoid notice. Emperor Klextar received the reports of the demonstration in his private chambers on the Dominion capital world. For hours, he studied the tactical analyses and capability assessments prepared by his finest military minds. The conclusion they reached was unanimous and terrifying. The Dominion could not defeat humanity in conventional warfare. But Klextar had not built the greatest empire in galactic history by accepting defeat gracefully. If conventional warfare could not defeat the humans, then he would use unconventional methods. He would find their weaknesses. He would exploit their psychology. He would turn their own allies against them. The Emperor began planning the largest military campaign in Dominion history. Not a direct assault on Earth. That would be suicide. Instead, he would force humanity to spread their forces thin by threatening every species that had allied with them. He would make the humans choose between protecting their homeworld and protecting their friends. It was a sound strategy. It should have worked. Klextar's first mistake was assuming that humanity would fight the next war using the same tactics they had demonstrated at Sol. His second mistake was believing that the humans he had observed were representative of Earth's true military capabilities. His third and final mistake was underestimating what happens when you threaten something that humans have decided to protect. The war that followed would be remembered as the shortest and most decisive conflict in galactic history. It would also be the last time any species was foolish enough to threaten Earth or its allies. But that is a story for another day. As Ambassador Sarah Chan stood on the observation deck of Earth's embassy, watching the ships of a dozen species arrive to negotiate new treaties and trade agreements, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 6 months ago, humanity had been an unknown species on the edge of galactic civilization. Now, they were the most influential power in known space. The galaxy had learned to respect human strength. More importantly, they had learned to value human friendship. Earth's allies knew that human protection came with certain guarantees, and Earth's enemies had learned that human vengeance was swift, decisive, and absolute. The age of conquest was indeed over. In its place, a new era had begun. An era where disputes were settled through negotiation, where the strong protected the weak, and where any species foolish enough to threaten the peace would face the combined might of Earth and its allies. It wasn't the galaxy that the previous generation of leaders had expected, but it was the galaxy that humanity had created through the simple act of refusing to be conquered. Sarah smiled as she watched a Dominion diplomatic vessel dock at the orbital facility. Emperor Klextar had finally requested a meeting to discuss peace terms. It had taken him longer than she had expected, but eventually, even the most stubborn rulers learned to respect reality. The message was clear to everyone in the galaxy. Earth would not be conquered. Earth would not be intimidated. And Earth would not abandon its friends. That was the new reality of galactic civilization. A reality where humans had taken their place not as conquerors, but as the ultimate guardians of peace. After 10,000 years of perfecting the art of war, humanity had finally found the perfect enemy to fight, anyone foolish enough to threaten the peace they had created.